The market was a huge, messy place with smells and sounds that would make anyone dizzy. Neon signs blinked in languages Tyler couldn't read, making strange shadows on the narrow paths between vendor stalls. The smell of smoke from cooking mixed with the metallic smell of welding torches and the sweet, almost sickening smell that some aliens seemed to like. Tyler had been walking around for almost an hour, his boots scraping against the dirty metal floor as he looked for something he could actually buy. His stomach growled. When was the last time he ate something other than freeze-dried ration paste? 3 days? 4. He knew that his credit chip was getting lighter every time he checked it, but it was just his imagination. 7 credits. That was all he had left. 7 measly credits in a galaxy where a good meal cost 15. A vendor selling what looked like glowing fruit called out to him in a language that his cheap translator couldn't understand. Tyler shook his head and kept going. Another merchant tried to grab his sleeve with 3 tentacles at once while yelling about cheap navigation chips. Tyler pulled away and went deeper into the market, where the stalls were less well-kept and the lights were dimmer. He saw it then. A merchant stood behind a table that was tilted and looked like it was about to fall apart. The creature had 6 arms of different lengths and skin that was the color of ripe plums. 2 of its arms were sorting through piles of what looked like broken computer parts, another was scratching its belly, and the last 3 were waving at people who walked by with desperate excitement. The stall itself was a mess. There were piles of rusty weapons next to broken datapads. There were broken parts for hover bikes stacked in a corner with a sign that said, "Maybe works," in 3 languages. But Tyler's eyes were drawn to something in the back corner of the stall, half hidden behind a pile of what looked like engine coils. It was big, about the size of a big watermelon, and the surface was crystalline, which could have made it look pretty at one point. It was now covered in a thick layer of dust and dirt, as if it had been there for years. Possibly for decades. Even with all that dirt on it, the crystal had a strange quality. Tyler could swear he saw colors swirling deep inside when the market lights flickered at certain angles. The merchant saw him staring, and all 6 arms suddenly came to life, waving and making gestures with new energy. "Hey human. Yes you. Come on. I have the best deals in all of Outpost Krell." Tyler moved slowly and carefully. He knew that merchants who were this eager usually had a good reason. "What is that thing in the corner?" He pointed at the clear object. The merchant's 3 eyes got bigger, as if they were surprised that anyone would ask about it. 4 of its arms began to move in different directions. One pulled the object forward, another wiped the dust with a dirty rag, a third scratched its head, and the 4th made big gestures. "Ah, you have a good eye. Very good eye for people." Its translator chip was old and crackly, which made it sound like every word was coming through a broken radio. "This is an egg from a Draconix. Very, very rare. Very useful." Tyler had heard that word before. Draconix. He tried to remember where it was. Some documentary he'd only seen half of on the long trip from Earth? Or maybe it was brought up in the basic xenobiology class that all humans had to take before they could leave the solar system. Something about creatures from long ago. Risky. Gone. Draconix. Tyler said it again and got closer. "Those big dragon things? I thought they were gone." Yes. No longer living. Very extinct." The merchant's excitement somehow grew even more. "This makes the egg very valuable. A piece of history. Usually worth millions of credits. Collectors pay a lot." Tyler raised an eyebrow. If it was worth millions, why was it in the trash in the worst part of the market? "So why are you selling it here?" The merchant's face changed. Its voice lost some of its crazy energy and all 6 arms drooped a little. Well, there is a small problem." 2 of its hands made a gesture that Tyler's translator turned into tiny insignificant detail. "This egg is broken. Gone. Is probably dead for about 200 years. Possibly more. No one knows for sure." "Dead?" Tyler said in a flat voice. "Very dead. Totally dead. There are no signs of life, no energy readings, nothing." The merchant nodded a lot. "I bought it at an estate sale 30 years ago. I thought it might hatch someday but it never did. Did everything. Nothing works, not heat, cold, radiation or electricity. Just a rock that's pretty dead now." Tyler took a closer look at the egg. He could see it better now that it was in the light. The crystal shell looked almost like opal, with veins of what could have been gold or copper running through it. Even though it was covered in years of dirt, there was something interesting about it. Something that made him want to keep looking. "Why keep it if it has no value?" Tyler said. The merchant's shoulders drooped, and all 6 of his arms hung down. "Value and feelings? Oh, dumbness? Choose what you want. Every day my friend tells me to get rid of it. She says, "It takes up space. You could sell something useful there," she says. "But I keep thinking, maybe it will surprise me tomorrow." The creature made a noise that sounded like a sigh. "Tomorrow never comes though. So now I say that's enough. I sell it for whatever I can get. Make room. Get on with your life. What is the price?" Tyler said the question before he really thought about it. The merchant's eyes lit up again. "For you, a special price for humans. You seem like the kind of person who likes things that are hard to find." 5 credits. Tyler's hand went to the credit chip that was in his pocket. 5 credits. That was more than half of what he had left. That was meant to be enough food for the next week. That money was meant to help fix the leak in his ship's coolant before it got too bad. That was supposed to keep him from dying. But there was something about the egg that drew him in. It could have been the loneliness of traveling through space, where you don't see another person for weeks at a time. Maybe it was the heavy burden of being poor and desperate in a galaxy that didn't care if he lived or died. Maybe he was just sick of making smart choices that never seemed to make things better for him. Or maybe he felt something deep down in his gut. A tug. A connection he couldn't put into words. 3 credits, Tyler said in response. "That's all I can give." The merchant's arms waved around a lot. 3 credits? You make fun of me. This is a part of the history of the galaxy. Last remnant of the powerful draconic species. More than 3 credits for the metal value alone. You said it yourself, it's a dead rock. There aren't any other buyers. They looked at each other. The merchant looked at Tyler with 3 eyes, while Tyler looked at him with his usual 2. Finally, all of the creature's arms fell. Okay. 3 credits. You steal from me, human, but that's okay. At least it finds a new home. You might have better luck than I do. Maybe human stubbornness works when alien patience doesn't. Tyler took out his credit card and sent 3 credits. There was a soft beep when the transaction went through, which seemed way too happy for what he'd just done. He had just spent almost half of what little money he had left on a dead alien egg. Jessica, his ex-girlfriend, would have gone crazy. His flight instructor on Earth would have called him a fool. His mother would have given him that look of disappointment that she was so good at. The merchant put the egg in some ripped-up cloth that might have been a tarp at one point. Good luck, person. It might have just needed someone dumb enough to believe in it. Tyler lifted the egg. It was heavier than it looked, and even though it was in a cold market stall, it was warm to the touch. There must be leftover heat from the market's climate system. He told himself that, at least. He heard other merchants laughing as he walked away, holding the egg in both arms. A reptile with too many teeth yelled, "Stupid human! Wasting money on junk. That egg has been dead since before your kind left your planet." Another vendor, who had something that looked like a jellyfish floating, made a sound that his translator turned into mocking laughter. "People on Earth don't know anything. Spend credits on things that aren't worth anything." Tyler kept walking, his jaw set and his arms tight around the egg. Let them have a good time. People had laughed at him before. People laughed when he told them he wanted to be a salvage trader. They laughed when he bought his old ship with all the money he had saved. When he left Earth with big plans to get rich in the frontier territories, a lot of people laughed. He was used to it at this point. Tyler couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just done something important as he made his way back to his ship through the twisting hallways of Outpost Krell, avoiding other travelers and trying not to think about how little money he had left. Something that was important. He felt the egg's warmth against his chest. He told himself again that it was just leftover heat. Just leftover heat. 3 days had gone by since Tyler brought the egg on board his ship, and to be honest, nothing had changed. The starboard engine on the ship was still leaking coolant. The galley still smelled a little like burnt circuits from that electrical problem he couldn't quite figure out. His bank account still showed 4 credits and 23 cents, which was somehow even more depressing than just having 4 credits. Tyler sat in what the ship's original maker had optimistically called a dining area. It was really just a fold-down table attached to the wall with a bench that had seen better decades. You could call it that. He was eating his dinner. It was a chicken-flavored protein paste that had been reconstituted, but it didn't taste like chicken at all. It tasted like an alien who had never been to Earth tried to make chicken using only chemicals and sadness. The egg was on the floor about 5 feet away, leaning against the wall near the cargo bay door. Tyler had cleaned it the day before, mostly because he didn't have anything else to do during the 12-hour trip between stations. When you cleaned off 200 years of dirt and grime, the crystalline shell turned out to be very pretty. The ship's dim overhead lights caught the pearlescent sheen and made little rainbow patterns on the walls. "Do you know what's funny?" Tyler said this without looking up from his food. He was speaking to the egg. Once more. The third time today. I gave you almost all of my money. If my mom could see me now, she'd shake her head like she always does. You know, that way that makes you sad but not surprised? He took another spoonful of the paste. It tasted worse as it cooled down for some reason. Why, Tyler, baby, she'd say. Why would you buy a dead rock instead of food? Instead of drugs? Instead of anything useful? He did a good job of copying his mother's worried, high-pitched voice. And to be honest, I wouldn't know how to answer her. I still don't. The egg was still and quiet, just like it had been for the last 72 hours. Tyler had been reading about Draconics for the past few days, during the long, boring times when there was nothing to do but read old database entries. It turns out that they were top predators long before people learned how to make fire. Some records said they could grow to be as long as 50 feet. Also smart as any intelligent life form in the galaxy. It seemed like cheating that they could talk to each other telepathically. But Tyler kept coming back to this interesting part. Every species in the galaxy had tried to befriend them, tame them, or make them allies, servants, or friends. The ancient Peluvians, the Cortex Empire, and the modern Galactic Council are all examples. Millions of years and thousands of tries. Every single try failed. The Draconics seemed to think that all other species were below them. Not good enough. Not worth it. They would rather die than get close to anyone, and in the end that's what happened. They just died out, wouldn't give in, and took their superiority complex with them. Humans have this strange habit, Tyler said as he scraped the bottom of his food container. We talk to things that can't talk back. In Detroit, my neighbor had a cactus. Gave it the name Gerald. I talked to Gerald every morning while I watered it. One cactus, mind you. Almost dead. He smiled when he thought about it. Mrs. Patterson was 73 years old and sure that Gerald understood her problems with the weather and her useless son-in-law. My dad was like that with his truck too. This old Ford from 2089 is in bad shape. The thing barely worked and was held together with duct tape and prayers, but he loved it. When it started on the first try, I would pat the dashboard and say, "Good girl." Tyler laughed, but it sounded a little sad. 5 years had passed since his dad died. He'd say sorry to it when he had to push it too hard. Spoke the word sorry out loud to a machine. Tyler barely noticed the ship's ventilation system humming in the background. It was a constant white noise that he had gotten used to. Stars flew by outside the little porthole window in the strange stretched way they do when you travel faster than light. Tyler thought, maybe it's genetic, and then he gave up on the protein paste and threw the container into the recycling bin. This need to connect with things, even things that don't make sense to connect back. Maybe it's just in our nature to look for friends wherever we can. We are social animals, aren't we? That's what all the books on xenopsychology say. People need to connect with others or they go crazy. He stood up and stretched and his back popped 3 times. Living on a small ship was bad for your back. Tyler walked over to the egg, crouched down next to it, and ran his hand over the smooth, crystal-like surface. It always felt a little warm to the touch, which was strange, but he had convinced himself that it was just taking in heat from the ship's systems. He said softly, "I've been out here alone for 8 months. Since Jessica went away. Since the crew broke up. For 8 months, it was just me and this rusty old ship, moving salvage from one station to another and barely making enough money to keep the fuel tanks full." The empty ship made the confession feel heavier. Sometimes I don't talk to anyone for 3 or 4 days. Just trading terminals that run on their own and AI-powered customer service bots. Do you know how lonely that makes me? Tyler asked the egg. Of course you don't. You're a stone. Like an idiot, I bought a very dead, very expensive rock instead of food. You should probably get some sleep. He still had 6 hours to go until he got to the next station, and he needed to be alert when he was talking to buyers. The stuff he had in his cargo hold wasn't worth much, but if he played his cards right, he might be able to get enough credits to fix the leak in the coolant and buy some real food. Tyler was about to go to bed when something made him stop. A noise. No, not really a sound. More like a sound that you can feel. He felt a vibration in his chest instead of hearing it with his ears. He slowly turned around. The egg was moving. Not much, just a little shake like when you touch a speaker that plays bass-heavy music. Tyler's heart began to race. He crouched back down and stared at the crystal shell. He whispered, "No way. No way, no way, no way." The shaking got worse. The whole egg was shaking now and it was rocking a little on its base. As the shell moved, the rainbow patterns on the wall started to flicker faster, casting dancing lights all over the small galley. Tyler's thoughts were racing. This couldn't happen. The merchant had tried it out. There was a lot of information in the databases that said these eggs had been dormant for hundreds of years. Gone. Dead. Just nice rocks and nothing else. There was a crack. At first, it was just a hairline crack that ran down from the top of the egg for about 3 inches. But then another crack appeared, and then another, spreading across the surface like a web of light. Because there was light coming from inside. The cracks let in bright blue light, which is the color of the sky on a perfect summer day on Earth. It was both beautiful and scary at the same time. Tyler scrambled backward until his back hit the wall on the other side. His breathing was quick and shallow. He told himself, "This isn't happening. I think I'm seeing things. Bad protein paste. Getting sick from food. That's what this is." But the egg kept breaking. Some of the crystal shell broke off and hit the metal floor, making soft tinkling sounds like wind chimes. As each piece fell, more light spilled out, filling the galley with that amazing blue glow. Tyler had to squint because it was so bright. The egg was now splitting open, and the two halves were pulling apart like a flower blooming in fast motion. Tyler could see something moving inside, something that had been curled up and was now stretching after what must have been a very long sleep. The first thing that came out was a small head. It was about the shape of a triangle and had scales that looked wet and new all over it. 2 eyes opened, and they shone with the same blue light that had been inside the egg. The eyes focused, looked around, and then they locked onto Tyler. Neither of them moved for a while. Tyler couldn't get any air. His brain was trying to figure out what he was seeing, but it felt like his thoughts were moving through honey. The creature pulled itself all the way out of the egg and fell to the floor in a clumsy pile of wings, tail, and legs that clearly didn't know how to work together yet. It was small, about the size of a house cat, and its scales changed color from gray to silver depending on how the light hit them. The wings were very small, not big enough to fly, and they were folded against its back like crumpled paper. It made a noise that was somewhere between a cat's purr and a bird's chirp. It was high-pitched and not sure what it was. Then it turned to Tyler again and started to walk toward him. Tyler pushed himself harder against the wall. "Stay back. Just stay there." But the creature kept coming, walking and falling over on legs that shook with each step. It was learning how to move in real time, figuring out which leg went where and how to keep its balance. It pressed its small head against Tyler's outstretched hand when it got close enough. As soon as they touched, Tyler felt a wave of warmth go through his body. Not warmth in the body, but there was warmth there too. This was different, more profound. It felt like coming back home after a long trip. Like hearing a song you loved as a kid. Like when someone says, "I understand," after you've been alone for too long. And then, for some reason, there were words in his head. Not words, but more like feelings that his brain turned into words without him having to think about it. "Say, buddy. Home." Tyler's hand shook as he slowly and carefully ran his fingers over the creature's head. He thought the scales would be hard, but they were soft. The dragon, because what else could it be, made that purring chirping sound again and moved closer. "You're real," Tyler said softly. "You are really real." "True. Here. Yours." The dragon's legs finally gave out from being tired, and it fell into Tyler's lap, its eyes already starting to close. The blue light was fading and turning into a soft shimmer under the scales. Tyler was sitting on the floor of his small galley with his back against the wall. An infant dragon was curled up on his lap and falling asleep. He had a lot of questions in his head. How could this happen? Why did it hatch now? For what reason? What was he supposed to do with a dragon? Tyler didn't care about the answers right now, though. The dragon's breathing slowed down to the rhythm of sleep, and the warmth and connection he felt kept pulsing through him. He wasn't alone for the first time in 8 months. Tyler's whole life changed in just 4 months. Tyler had started calling the dragon Ash because her scales looked like cooling embers in low light. She grew at a rate that shouldn't have been biologically possible. In the first week, she grew from the size of a house cat to the size of a golden retriever. Tyler had to move everything around in the cargo bay so she could move around. He pushed all of his salvage tools to one side and built what he could only call a nest out of old thermal blankets and foam padding from shipping containers. Things got really interesting in the second week. Tyler had been mining a small asteroid field and using his ship's tractor beam to pull in pieces of rock that might have minerals that were worth a lot of money. He had brought one piece that looked very promising into the cargo bay to be processed when Ash came over, sniffed it with her small nose, and then just started eating it. Not nibbling. Eating. She bit off a piece of rock the size of Tyler's fist and crunched it like it was a potato chip. "Whoa, hey, that's not food." Tyler had yelled and rushed over. But Ash had looked at him with her bright blue eyes, tilted her head, and kept eating. She ate the whole thing in less than 10 minutes. Tyler stood there in shock, thinking she would get sick, choke, or something awful would happen. She had grown right in front of his eyes, though. Her scales were brighter, her wings were a few inches longer, and she looked more awake than ever. Tyler then changed everything about how he did business. He stopped selling all the minerals he dug up. Instead, he kept about 30% of each haul and gave it to Ash. She ate iron, nickel, platinum, and even tiny amounts of gold. Her body somehow turned raw materials into growth, breaking down parts and putting them back together as bone, muscle, and those amazing scales. By the third week, she was as big as a German shepherd, and Tyler had to keep her nest in the cargo bay because she couldn't fit in his room anymore. She was as big as a horse by the 6th week. Tyler had cleared out the whole cargo bay by the 3rd month, except for the things that were absolutely necessary. Ash could barely move around in there anymore. But the growth of the body was only one part of it. Tyler was really amazed by how her mind grew. Her ability to talk was very basic in the 1st month. He had simple feelings in his head. I'm hungry, exhausted, flat, afraid. It was like having a very smart dog that could tell you what she needed without barking. But then she began to understand what people were saying. Tyler talked to her all the time just like he had talked to the egg. He would tell stories about his day while he worked. Okay, this asteroid looks like it might work. Look at those dark lines? That usually means that there are nickel deposits. We're going to bring it in, scan it, and if I'm right, we'll have enough credits to fix the controls for the environment. At first, he thought she was just reacting to how he sounded. But then, about 6 weeks in, Tyler said to Ash, "Can you move to the left? I have to get to that panel." And she had gone to the left. Not by chance. Not by chance. She understood what they meant and did what they said. Tyler had stopped moving and was looking at her. Did you really understand me?" Ash had tilted her head and sent a message that his brain translated as, obviously, slow human. After that, their communication changed quickly. She began to understand sentences that were hard to understand. She learned the names of things on the ship. She was able to follow instructions that had more than one step. Tyler was pretty sure that by the 3rd month, she knew English better than some of the aliens he had met at trading stations. And she was smart. Not just smart about animals. Not even dolphin or elephant smart. She was very smart, which was scary. She learned how to open and close the cargo bay doors by watching Tyler do it twice. She figured out how to use the ship's fake gravity controls on her own and liked to change them a little bit when Tyler wasn't looking, just to mess with him. Once, when Tyler was having trouble with a hard repair, she watched for about 10 minutes and then pointed with her snout at a loose connection that he had completely missed. Her personality also came through more clearly. She was always curious about new things and sounds and would look into them. She was very stubborn and would never do something if she thought it was a bad idea. And she cared for Tyler in a way that was both sweet and scary. For example, there was the time a maintenance bot on a trading station got too close to Tyler while he was sleeping in his ship. Tyler woke up to see Ash standing over him, eyes glowing bright, and growling at the little bot through the window until it beeped nervously and rolled away. But the biggest change happened about a week ago. Tyler was angry because he was dealing with a buyer who was trying to cheat him out of a platinum sale. He had been angry and not saying anything out loud, just thinking about how dishonest traders were and whether he should just walk away from the deal. And then he heard Ash's voice in his head. Not feelings this time. Real words. Warning. Liar. Don't believe. Tyler was almost going to fall. He turned around to look at Ash, who was resting in the cargo bay and watching him calmly. Did you just say something? Yes. Do you hear me? Her mental voice was strange. It sounded like a woman, but it also had something else in it, something old and powerful that made Tyler's hair stand on end. They had been working on this new way to talk to each other since then. Ash couldn't say words out loud because her vocal cords or whatever dragons have weren't made for human language. But she was getting clearer every day in her mind. Ash was huge now for months after hatching. She was at least 12 feet long from her nose to her tail, and her wingspan was probably 20 feet when they were fully extended, but she didn't have enough room to spread them. Her scales had changed from a dull gray to a deep crimson color that shone like rubies. Along her neck and spine, there were gold highlights that looked almost like metal. Tyler felt proud and maybe a little scared when he saw how beautiful she was. Because she was also scary. When she was angry or protective, those blue eyes could burn bright. When she hatched, her teeth were tiny little points. Now they were the size of kitchen knives. When she wasn't careful, her claws could cut through metal. And when she moved, Tyler could feel the power in her body. It reminded him that she was a predator, an apex predator, even though she was his friend. Tyler was steering his ship toward the docking bay of Station 7, a medium-sized trading outpost he had been to a few times before. It was mostly legal and it was pretty safe. He also had a buyer for the platinum he mined last week. This was supposed to be an easy deal. Tyler said over his shoulder to the cargo bay, "Okay girl, we're landing on Station 7. He had set up a camera feed so that he could see Ash even when he was in the cockpit. "I have to sell this platinum. This is good stuff. It should give us enough credits to finally fix that leak in the coolant and maybe even buy some real food for once. Stay here and be quiet, okay?" Ash tilted her huge head on the screen, and the red and gold scales on her body caught the light from the cargo bay's overhead panels. She had been lying down, but now she was standing up, and her tail was moving in that way that showed she was upset. Warning. The word came to Tyler's mind, clear and sharp. This was the new thing that happened about a week ago. Ash had begun to sense things before they happened, or maybe she was just noticing things that Tyler didn't. In any case, she was usually right when she said danger. Tyler said, "It's fine," trying to sound sure of himself. "Just a place to trade. I've been here before." Danny is the buyer's name. He's a nice guy who always pays what he owes. 30 minutes at the most. No. Danger. Feel it? Ash's inner voice was more demanding now. Tyler could see her pacing in the small space she had on the camera feed. Her movements were agitated. "I know you're worried, but we need these credits. We only have 3 days worth of food left, and the ship is falling apart. I have to sell this." Tyler could tell that Ash didn't like what he said, even though she didn't say anything. She had gotten better at sending emotions over long distances, and right now she was sending "bad idea" so strongly that it was giving him a headache. With a metallic thud, the ship settled into the docking clamp. Tyler went through the post-landing checklist without thinking about it. He turned off the engines, equalized the air pressure, and checked the docking collar's seal. Everything seemed fine. He got up from the pilot's chair and took his jacket off the hook by the door. The station kept the temperature low because they thought it would make everyone a little uncomfortable, which would make it easier for different species to be comfortable. He yelled toward the cargo bay, "I'll be back soon. Don't break anything while I'm gone." He felt Ash's growl of anger instead of hearing it. She didn't like being left behind, but there was no way Tyler could bring a 12-foot dragon into a trading station without making everyone freak out. Most species had never seen a Draconix that was still alive. Most species thought they were gone for good. The questions alone would take hours, and that's if the station security didn't just shoot first and ask questions later. Tyler walked through the docking corridor and into the main station. Today, Station 7 was busier than usual. Merchants yelled in a dozen different languages, and their translator chips made a constant buzz of voices that all sounded the same. The air smelled like a mix of ozone, food cooking, and air that had been used too many times. He looked at his handheld terminal to find out where the meeting was. Bay 7G in the lower market area. Danny had texted earlier to say he was ready to talk. Tyler pushed his way through the crowd with one hand on the small box that held the platinum samples. He still had the whole shipment on his ship. He wasn't dumb enough to carry it around. These were just samples to show how good they were. Bay 7G was in a part of the station that was less busy, away from the main market. As Tyler walked down the hall, he felt the first tingle of fear. There wasn't enough noise. Not enough. The lights on the ceiling flickered in a way that made it look like they needed work. He was about to turn around. He almost listened to the voice in his head that sounded a lot like Ash saying, "I told you so." But he needed those credits. Really needed them. He kept going though. When he got there, the bay door was half open. Tyler could see Danny, a short man with red hair and a friendly smile, inside. But there were 2 other people in the shadows behind him. Big numbers. Not a person. Tyler's instincts told him to run, but he kept moving forward like an idiot because Danny was still smiling and waving him in, and maybe Tyler was wrong. This might be okay. It wasn't okay. As soon as Tyler walked through the door, it slammed shut behind him with a loud bang. Tyler's stomach dropped when the 2 people stepped out of the shadows. Pirates from Carewell. He knew what kind of animal it was from the database. It walked on 2 legs, had scales that were dark green, and mouths full of too many teeth. Danny's smile didn't change, but his eyes did. "I'm sorry, Tyler. It's business. These guys are giving me a lot more money than you are for information about your cargo. And it looks like they really want to know about the pet you've been hiding." A Carewell stepped forward, holding a weapon in its clawed hand. It looked like a shock stick that could knock someone out with one hit. "Human," it hissed through its translator. "You have platinum. You have a strange creature. We take both of them now." Tyler's hand moved toward the small gun he kept in his jacket, but he knew he wouldn't be able to get it. These were professionals, and he was just a junk dealer who had only been in 3 fights in his whole life. This was not good. This was very, very bad. Tyler had a bad feeling that Ash had known the whole time. The Galactic Council chamber was built to scare people, and Tyler had to admit that it was doing a great job. The room was huge and round, at least the size of 3 football fields. The ceiling was so high that Tyler couldn't see the details in the dim light. The floor he was standing on was a small platform, maybe 20 feet wide, and it was right in the middle of everything. It was made of a dark metal that made his image look like a distorted mirror. The seats of the council representatives were all around him, rising up in concentric circles like a huge amphitheater. A lot of them. Could be thousands. Tyler couldn't count them all because they went on and on until they were lost in the dark. There was an alien from a different species, world, and corner of the galaxy in each seat. Some looked like people, while others were so different from people that Tyler's brain had a hard time putting them into groups. Tentacles, crystal structures, beings that looked like liquid light, creatures with too many eyes or none at all. And every single one of them was looking down at him. Tyler had never felt so small in his whole life. He was just one person standing alone in the middle of this huge room. He didn't represent anyone, had no power, and didn't even know how he got there. He had been running away from Station 7 with Ash 3 weeks ago after the terrible meeting with the KRLO pirates. He was now standing in front of the most powerful government in all of space. It felt like everything that happened between then and now was a blur. After Ash had broken through the docking bay to save him, station security had gotten involved. There had been a lot of panic, investigations, and reports. Many reports. In less than 48 hours, officials from the Galactic Council had come to Tyler's ship to ask questions. He got a formal notice within a week. If he didn't show up, he would be arrested and his boat would be taken. So there he was, standing on a platform in the only clean clothes he owned, while hundreds of strange beings argued about what to do with him. The High Arbiter sat at the top of the chamber, right in Tyler's line of sight. A board council clerk had told him what the title meant while he was waiting to be called in. The High Arbiter was the main judge and the one who spoke for the council. He or she made the final decisions on matters of galactic law. Tyler had only seen ceruleans in database entries before. High Arbiter Kelvin was one of them. He was probably 8 feet tall if he stood up, and his skin looked like it was made of blue crystal. Not in a figurative sense. In a literal sense. His whole body looked like it was made up of clear blue crystals that caught and bent the light in the room. When he moved, which he did very slowly, light spread out across the room like he was a living prism. His eyes were the darkest blue, almost black, and they didn't reflect anything. Like event horizons, they pulled in light and absorbed it. When Kelvin talked, the translation system made his voice sound cold and precise, as if every word was a judgment. Tyler Bennett from Earth. You are standing in front of this council because you have a living draconic specimen. This is the first time this has happened, and it is against the law in the galaxy. Tyler's throat was parched. He had been standing here for 20 minutes while different council members argued about how to do things in languages that his translator couldn't understand. He didn't want his voice to sound as rough as it did when they finally talked to him directly. Against the law? He tried to sound respectful but firm. His lawyer, Patricia, was a human woman who worked for Earth's diplomatic mission. She had taught him a lot. Don't be pushy but don't give in either. Don't back down. I bought an egg that your own databases said was dead. Not worth it. I have the proof of purchase. The seller gave me proof that it hadn't shown any signs of life in 30 years. Kelvin said without pausing, the origin of acquisition is irrelevant, as if Tyler's words were just background noise. Galactic Heritage Law, Section 47, Subsection 12 says that draconics are an extinct species. Any specimens found, whether alive or dead, must be given to the Xenobiological Research Institute right away for study and preservation. She's not a specimen, Tyler said, clenching his fists at his sides. Ash is a person who lives and thinks. She is aware. She talks to people. She has opinions, feelings, and thoughts. You can't just put her in a box and study her like an object. There was a murmur in the council chamber. Tyler didn't know if it was helpful or hurtful. Most likely hostile. His translator picked up bits and pieces of different languages, like audacious, primitive, and typical human arrogance. A member of the council from the lower tiers spoke up. It was a creature that looked like a floating mass of tentacles with a central eye. The voice that came through the translator sounded wet and bubbling. The human talks about sentience, but our standards never proved that draconics were truly sentient. They were dangerous, wild, and deadly predators. It's just lucky timing that this one hasn't killed you yet. She was born and became close to me. Tyler shot back and looked up at the being with tentacles. She made the choice. I didn't make her do it. I didn't fool her. For 200 years, no one wanted a dead egg, but it came to life in front of me and decided to connect with me. That's not just luck. That's a choice. That's what it means to be sentient. Imprinting, called out another council member. This one was a reptilian species with bright orange scales. Lower creatures leave a mark on the first thing they see when they hatch. It doesn't mean anything. She's not a lesser being. The big room echoed with Tyler's voice. He was getting angry and he knew it, but the way they talked about Ash like she was just an animal made him even angrier. She talks to me without words. She can follow complicated directions. She fixed a mechanical problem on my ship that I had been having trouble with for days. She reads for crying out loud. I've seen her look at star charts and figure out how to get around. Irrelevant, Kelvin said, and his voice cut through the noise in the chamber like a knife through silk. All was quiet. The question is not whether the creature is smart or not. The problem has to do with safety and the law. Draconics are safe. Historical records also say that they are very dangerous. This council can't let a civilian keep something that could be dangerous and out of control. She's not angry. She's never hurt anyone who wasn't trying to hurt me. Kelvin said, reading from a screen that appeared in the air in front of him, the incident on Station 7 caused 17 million credits worth of damage to property. 3 people were taken to the hospital with deep cuts. 1 docking bay was completely ruined. Environmental controls at the station were broken, so emergency repairs were needed. And all of this happened because your creature chose to get involved in what station security said was a legal enforcement action. A legal action to enforce the law? Tyler couldn't believe what he was hearing. Those were pirates. They were trying to steal Ash and rob me. The recordings are with station security. Yes, station security has recordings of a Draconix going crazy in public places, Kelvin said. What happened before that is less clear. But again, the details of that event aren't the most important thing to us. We are worried about the creature itself and the danger it poses. Patricia, his lawyer, lightly touched his arm. She had been standing a little behind him the whole time as she had been told to do. According to council rules, only the accused could speak unless they asked for legal help. But her touch reminded me to stay calm and not make things worse. Tyler took a deep breath. High Arbiter, members of the council, I see what you're worried about. Yes, I do. But Ash isn't a danger. She is a friend of mine. My partner. We've been together for months and she's never been mean to me except when she was defending herself. She's helped me, kept me safe, and to be honest, she's probably the best thing that's ever happened to me. Kelvin said, emotional attachment is not a reason for a legal exception. Then what is? Tyler asked. What kind of basis would you accept? From where I'm standing, this doesn't seem like a legal issue. It seems more like you're afraid of something you don't understand. The chamber exploded. Several members of the council started yelling at the same time, and their translators made a lot of angry noise. Tyler heard words like insolent, primitive species, and how dare he. As soon as Kelvin raised one crystal hand, everyone went quiet. You go too far, human. Your kind has only been in council space for 50 standard years. You are new here and don't know our laws or how we do things. You don't ask this body for anything. Tyler said, I'm not making demands, trying to keep his voice steady. I'm asking for basic fairness. Ash is a living thing that chose to be with me. She's not an object. She's not a subject of research. By any reasonable definition, she's a person, and her choices should be respected. Kelvin said coldly, the council will decide what she is. The choice has been made. The creature will be moved to the Xenobiological Research Institute in less than 48 hours. There, the right tests will be done to find out how smart it is, how dangerous it is, and what it could be used for. Tyler said in a low voice, her name is Ash, but the sound carried in the huge room. Not it. Not the creature. Ash. And she's not going anywhere. You have no choice in this matter, Kelvin said, and his voice sounded almost sorry now, which made it worse. You are just one person with no political power, no military support, and no legal right to refuse a council order. People will board your ship, take the creature off, and pay you fairly for the trouble. This is the best result you could have hoped for. Be thankful that we aren't making you pay for the damage at Station 7. Tyler's thoughts were racing. They weren't able to do this. They couldn't just take Ash away. But what could he really do to stop them? He didn't have any power. No strength. He was exactly what Kelvin said, a person who didn't matter in the big picture of galactic politics. But then something happened that made everything different. There was a noise in the room. It started off low, so low that Tyler could feel it in his bones before he heard it. A vibration that made the metal floor under his feet hum. The crystals in Kelvin's body started to vibrate, making a ringing sound that was high-pitched. The noise got louder, deeper, and stronger. It was coming from all over the place and nowhere at the same time. The lights in the chamber flickered. Things on the desks of council members began to shake and rattle. Tyler then understood what it was. Ash was screaming. She was on his ship, 3 levels below the council chamber, probably locked in the cargo bay where Tyler had told her to stay safe. But her roar was so strong that it traveled through the station's metal and composite materials and into this room, where it had a psychic weight that made everyone there freeze. It wasn't just noise. It was there. It was strength. It was a statement that struck a chord with a deep part of every living thing's brain. I am here. I'm strong. If you touch what's mine, you'll have to deal with the consequences. The roar lasted only 10 seconds, but when it stopped, the room was completely quiet. Members of the council sat still in their seats. A few of them looked very scared. Some people looked confused. A few of them looked mad. But they all had felt it. That ancient, undeniable power. It was hard to read High Arbiter Kelvin's face, but his voice sounded less cold and sure when he spoke. What was that? Tyler said. That was Ash reminding you that she's not a helpless creature to be caged and studied. He couldn't help but smile. She is paying attention to these events. She knows what's going on. And she's letting everyone know what she thinks. Tyler's life changed in more ways than one over the next 3 weeks. They changed everything for everyone in the whole galaxy. Like most revolutions, it started out small. While Tyler was waiting in a holding facility near the council chambers, he saw a news story from Earth that caught his attention. It wasn't really a jail. It was more like a diplomatic waiting room where they kept people who were involved in council business. He could use communication systems and get news from around the galaxy. This was probably because they couldn't completely cut him off from the outside world without formal charges. The news story showed the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. Tyler had been there once before on a school trip when he was a kid. The young woman reporter with too much makeup and an overly excited voice was standing in front of a display case that had been broken from the inside. Scientists are still trying to figure out how this happened, she said, out of breath. A Draconix egg that has been part of the museum's extinct species collection for over 40 years hatched this morning. The egg reportedly activated when retired Marine Corps veteran Robert Hayes came to see it during a regular museum visit. The camera switched to video from security cameras. Tyler saw an older man with gray hair and a military look walk by the display. He had stopped and looked at the egg with mild interest. Then the egg began to glow. It had hatched right in the middle of a busy museum with dozens of people watching. The dragon that came out was small, midnight blue with silver markings, and it went right to the old Marine without stopping. The video showed Hayes kneeling down with tears in his eyes while the dragon pushed its head against his chest. Mr. Hayes, who lost both of his sons in the colony wars 15 years ago, told reporters that he felt an immediate connection with the creature, the reporter went on. Officials at the museum are talking to government officials right now about what this means for other Draconix specimens that are still in collections around the world. Tyler had just finished reading that report when another one came in. This time, it came from a medical station that was orbiting Proxima Centauri. A trauma nurse working in the emergency room had been on duty for 18 hours straight, caring for kids who had been hurt in a car accident. There was a small museum in the station's research wing that had a Draconix egg that had been bought at an estate sale years ago. Witnesses say that around hour 16 of the nurse's shift, the egg started to vibrate. By the 17th hour, it was glowing so brightly that security was called. The egg had hatched by the time the nurse finally took her break and walked by the research wing. The emerald green dragon with golden eyes had somehow gotten out of its cage and found her in the cafeteria. The video showed a tired woman in scrubs sitting on the cafeteria floor crying. A dragon the size of a medium dog curled up in her lap and purred. Then the reports started coming in more quickly. A colony world on the edge of council space. A place to trade on the outer rim. A place to salvage things near the Kuiper Belt. A ship that carries people who are fleeing war. A farming community on a moon that has been changed. Draconix eggs were waking up all over the place where people lived. Not all of them. That was the weird part. There are about 3,000 Draconix eggs in museums, private collections, and other places across the galaxy. Only about 200 of them hatched in the first 3 weeks. But every one that hatched picked a person. And not just any person. A firefighter who saved 12 people from a burning building and wouldn't leave until everyone was safe. A teacher who had worked in poorly funded schools in poor areas for 30 years and bought her own supplies. A dad who gave a kidney to a stranger's child because he couldn't bear the thought of a child dying when he could help. A construction worker who put together a group of volunteers to help rebuild homes after a natural disaster. A social worker who had taken care of 43 kids over the course of 20 years. It didn't take long for the pattern to become clear. The dragons weren't picking people at random. They were picking people who had shown something in particular. Yes, courage, but not just that. Kindness. Giving up something for someone else. The ability to put others before yourself, to speak up when it would be easier to walk away, and to help when there was no reward other than knowing you did the right thing. This was the first time the galaxy had seen anything like it. Tyler watched the news with more and more amazement and, to be honest, a sense of vindication. On a galactic scale, everything he had been trying to tell the Council and everything he had argued about Ash's intelligence and ability to choose was coming true. These dragons weren't marking people at random. They were choosing certain people based on standards that the dragons themselves understood and thought were important. The news networks in space couldn't stop talking about it. There were arguments on every channel. Xenobiologists were sure there had to be a scientific reason, like a pheromone trigger or genetic compatibility. Historians looked through old records to find examples from the past. Leaders from a dozen different religions said it was the work of God. Politicians fought over what it meant for the balance of power. The Galactic Council also held an emergency meeting. Tyler was called again, but this time things were different. He wasn't alone this time. The Council had sent requests, which were almost orders, to dozens of the new human-dragon pairs that had just gotten married. Most of them had agreed to come, at least to make sure their rights were safe. 2 weeks after he first came in, Tyler walked back into that huge circular room with someone else. A lot of people. As before, Patricia, his lawyer, walked next to him. But behind them, in the observation galleries that Tyler hadn't even seen on his first visit, were people and their dragons. Tyler learned that Robert Hayes, a retired Marine, was there with his midnight blue dragon, which was named Valor. Angela Rodriguez was the name of the trauma nurse. She stood with her green dragon, Hope. Kevin Park, a young man who was only 22, had pulled 3 people out of a car wreck even though he had broken his arm. He had a copper-colored dragon named Courage. Patricia Wu, an older woman who had run a free clinic in the worst part of Neo-Tokyo for 40 years, was not his lawyer. She named her dragon Mercy. It was white with black spots. And there were a lot more. Every person has their own dragon. Each pair was a connection that the galaxy hadn't seen in millions of years. The gallery was full, and Tyler could see the council members moving around nervously in their high-up seats. They couldn't just ignore this one person anymore. There was a movement. If it was possible, High Arbiter Kelvin looked even more clear and cold than before. His voice sounded like someone who knew they were losing but didn't want to admit it yet. This emergency meeting was called to talk about the recent rise in Draconix hatchings and what they mean for the safety and stability of the galaxy. The Council agrees that the situation has changed since the first projections. Changed from what was first thought. That was one way to say it. Tyler almost laughed, but he didn't show it on his face. Kelvin's voice grew harder as he continued. However, the Council's position remains unchanged. Draconix are an extinct species protected under galactic heritage law. The fact that multiple specimens have become active does not change their legal status. All Draconix must be surrendered to proper authorities for study and containment. This is non-negotiable. You want to lock them up because you're scared, someone in the gallery said. Tyler turned to see that Robert Hayes was standing there with one hand on Valor's scaled neck. You're afraid that people now have something you can't control. There was a lot of noise in the chamber. Hayes was told to be quiet by council members. Other people in the gallery yelled back in support. Dragons all over the gallery started making low rumbling sounds that weren't quite roars but were strong enough that everyone could feel the warning behind them. Kelvin held up his hand to ask for silence, and eventually it came, but it took longer this time. He said, "An accident of biology won't make humanity too powerful," and the mask was starting to slip a little. The cold superiority was turning into something that looked like fear. You have only been in council space for 50 years. You do not deserve to have such power. Earned? Tyler stepped forward, and his voice rang out in the sudden silence. What do you think earning means? Because from where I'm standing, every person in this room has earned their bond by doing good things, being a good person, and choosing to be better than they had to be. You talk about individual merit, said a council member, who looked like living crystal and was purple instead of blue like Kelvin. But we talk about species-level responsibility. Humanity is young, rash, and violent. You've been in 6 major wars since you joined the council space. Your crime rates are higher than those of 70% of member species. Your environmental management is barely good enough. And now you want us to believe that you should have access to the most powerful predators the galaxy has ever known. Angela Rodriguez spoke up, and her voice was clear and steady even though she was talking to hundreds of aliens. "We don't need your permission. Our dragons chose us. They're not weapons, tools, or pets. They're partners, friends, and family. You can't make that go away." Kelvin said firmly, "We can and we will." He made a gesture and screens appeared in the air all over the room showing legal papers. "The Council has written an emergency resolution. All draconic specimens will be moved to a safe place where both the creatures and their human bondmates will be studied in a controlled setting. The humans will be paid well for their cooperation and will be able to see the creatures regularly under supervision." Kevin Park said in a flat voice, "You want to lock us up? That's what you're talking about, a prison where we can see our dragons through bars." Kelvin said without emotion, "We like to call it a research sanctuary." That's when Ash showed up. Tyler had made sure that his ship was docked as close to the council chamber as the rules would allow. He had told Ash to stay calm and listen to what was going on through their telepathic link. He should have known that she wouldn't stay quiet for long. Her roar filled the room again, but this time it was different. More in charge. More meaningful. It wasn't just Ash either. The voices of all the dragons in the gallery came together to make a sound that shook the walls and made the lights flicker. The roar had a psychic effect, but it also had a meaning. Tyler could feel it through his bond with Ash, and the other people could tell by the looks on their faces that they could feel it too. A note. A statement. A no. And then Ash said something.